Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about the future of Call of Duty on Nintendo platforms, as with this Activision acquisition by Microsoft, we have confirmation that these games will be coming to Switch. Of course, this is assuming the deal goes through, but it's looking pretty likely. All Xbox needs to do is get the CMA to approve, but either way, they will likely own Call of Duty very soon, and with that, per their agreements, bring Call of Duty to Nintendo platforms. So, if you're unaware, back in December of 2022, when they were still kind of ramping up this acquisition, Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, said Microsoft has entered a 10-year commitment to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo following the merger of Microsoft and Activision Blizzard King. Microsoft is committed to helping bring more games to more people, however they choose to play. Now, when this happened, I made a video on it, and I think a lot of people thought, okay, this is going to be either older games, maybe a cloud version, or maybe even just COD Mobile. However, it later was revealed that Phil Spencer is talking about parody versions. So he later said this: Microsoft and Nintendo have now negotiated and signed a binding 10-year legal agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo players, the same day as Xbox, with full feature and content parity, so they can experience Call of Duty just as Xbox and PlayStation gamers enjoy Call of Duty. Phil Spencer had also done an interview with the Washington Post where he said, "You can imagine, if the deal is closed on that date, starting to do development work to make that happen would likely take a bit of time. Once we get into the rhythm of this, our plan would be that when a Call of Duty game launches on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, that would also be available on Nintendo at the same time." So that right there is all a lot to take in. That's pure, raw confirmation that Call of Duty will be coming to Nintendo platforms. However, if you notice something interesting there, he's never specifically said Switch. So while it would be cool to see Xbox and Activision try to get a version of the current Call of Duty running on a Nintendo platform, first of all, because I think it'd be hilarious, but also it would just be so interesting to see them try to port that, get the file size on a Switch cartridge or even just as a download. It'd be very interesting to see that. I'm pretty sure this all just indicates that Phil Spencer is talking about the next Nintendo console. There was reports that he had specifically said Switch during one of the court hearings. However, I'm going to chalk that up as a mistake, and he just meant to say Nintendo, because all of the other wording from Phil Spencer and all the other heads of Microsoft and Xbox, everything has been just Nintendo players and not Switch. So while yes, it would be very cool if we could get Black Ops 2 or Modern Warfare 3 2011 on the Switch, I think we need to talk about the future, what this means for Switch 2 or the next Nintendo console, and what this could mean for Call of Duty and what kind of version of Call of Duty we could see on that console. Now, if you don't know me, I've been playing Call of Duty my entire life. My first Call of Duty was Call of Duty 3 on the Wii, and then I later fell in love even further and deeper with the series with COD 4, of course, on 360, but really when it got me was Call of Duty Black Ops 2 on the Wii U, and then later the next year was Ghosts, which isn't as great as Black Ops 2, certainly, but still a nice duo of games with my brand new shiny Wii U back in 2012 and 2013. The absence of Call of Duty on Nintendo platforms has been sad. I mean, it was pretty big on the Wii. I imagine those games sold millions of copies. It was also on DS. And while I don't think Nintendo would ever be my primary place to play Call of Duty in the future because of the specs, it's still something I really want to see, and I'm very curious to see how Microsoft and Activision handle it, because there are multiple facets that you have to understand here. Call of Duty is a graphical showcase. It is a very, very beautiful game. That didn't used to be the case. Call of Duty on 360, like, they look good. They ran great at 60 FPS. That was something in particular, the frame rate, that was really impressive with those old COD games that kind of put other FPS games to shame at the time, but it was never this crazy graphical powerhouse. It kind of is now. Call of Duty is one of the prettiest games every year, and because of that, because of all the 4K textures and all that, and Activision's stubbornness when it comes to compressing files, Call of Duty is very big. I recently reinstalled Cold War because I wanted to play that on PS5. It took up over 300 gigs. So that's the first thing I want to talk about, is the file size. Assuming the next Nintendo console is a follow-up to the Switch and still uses cartridges, what do you do there? I mean, that's going to be, I think, honestly, one of the biggest hurdles, let alone porting the game. Just literally the file size on a Nintendo console that's a big deal. Now, SD cards are very cheap now. You can get a 1 terabyte SD card for less than $100, so maybe that's not as big of a concern as I'm making it out to be, but it's still something they have to look at. We heard rumors from VGC recently that the Switch, or the next console, would have 512 gigs of internal memory, and while I think if Nintendo's really working closely with third-party partners, that would make sense because of Call of Duty, that's still not really enough, but the Xbox Series S has that same amount of storage, so maybe 512 gigs with a SD card that you buy yourself isn't that unreasonable. So maybe the file size isn't a huge deal. Certainly it wouldn't all be on that cartridge though, which is obviously disappointing from like a physical collector standpoint, but most Call of Duty players probably not going to care about that. So the file size is one thing, but what about the actual content and feature parity? I mean, that's a pretty big deal. It is kind of funny. I see a lot of people saying that there's no way Call of Duty could run on Switch, and while I think it probably couldn't run on Switch, that's true, I do think that unless the Switch 2 is less powerful than, let's say, a base PS4, we should really have no issue. Listen, it's not going to run the same. It's not going to look as good, but it will be the same game with the same content updates and all that, because Call of Duty still comes to PS4. Modern Warfare 3, the game releasing this year, these names are confusing, right? Modern Warfare 3 2023 is releasing on base PS4 and base Xbox One. And with reports that EA is bringing Star Wars Jedi Survivor to the base PS4 and Xbox One, it definitely makes you think, okay, well, first of all, when is that going to stop for PS4 and Xbox One? When is that going to stop for Call of Duty? Will the next Black Ops game be on PS4? And if so, why not bring it to the Switch 2? I mean, I think we're all kind of in agreement. The Switch 2 will probably be about as powerful as the PS4, or at least the base Xbox One, right? So getting Call of Duty on it, honestly, while yes, it wouldn't be, you know, the exact version and it wouldn't look as good as the PS5 and Series X version, it would still probably be pretty impressive, frankly. I think one important thing that I really hope Nintendo ups their game with the next console is just online infrastructure. Now, I've actually kind of defended Nintendo Online a little bit in the past. I don't think it's as bad as some people say. It depends on the game, right? You know, Mario Maker 2, that runs like garbage, but Splatoon 3 and Mario Kart, I've really never even had issue with at all. Even Smash Ultimate, which, yes, it lags sometimes. I don't know, it's about the same amount of lag I experience in other games on other consoles. But the actual infrastructure, not necessarily the connection, but the infrastructure of inviting friends to parties, having group chats, having voice chat, these are all very important things to Call of Duty. So if Call of Duty is coming to Nintendo, I hope Activision and Microsoft are making a push with them behind the scenes right now. Like, listen, hey, you might not want to have these features added, but if you want Call of Duty on Switch, that's going to be very important. Not that Switch doesn't have voice chat. I mean, Fortnite has voice chat in game, and a lot of games have voice chat within the game, but they need to have some sort of console-wide component that lets you join groups, join parties, have voice chat, send messages, that kind of stuff, invites. I mean, we can send invites now, but it's on like a game-by-game basis. We need more parity in that aspect from Nintendo to make this a more worthwhile experience on the Switch for sure. Something else I wonder about is COD Mobile / Warzone. So I do wonder about Warzone in particular because, you know, outside of COD Mobile, Warzone is the big moneymaker. It makes more money now through cosmetics than the $60 or $70 retail game, right? Warzone is huge. It's a free-to-play Battle Royale mode, but it is intrinsically linked to that paid release. Warzone, while technically a separate thing, it's still one and the same. I mean, you download Modern Warfare 3 to play Warzone, right? Or Modern Warfare 2 in this case. You download that, then you have access to Warzone. It uses all the same guns, same assets, same animations, all that stuff. So I do wonder, would Warzone come to Nintendo, or is this something they could maybe kind of weasel out of? Phil Spencer said the main games would have feature parity and content parity and it would be the same game, but technically, by definition, Warzone is separate, technically. I wouldn't really consider it separate, but it is a separate application, so I do wonder what this means for Warzone. You would think they would want to get Warzone on Switch because, like I said, it's their big moneymaker, but I do wonder if maybe that's something they don't want to deal with, you know? But that's just me speculating. Frankly, if they're going to get your Call of Duty, Black Ops, Cold War 2, or whatever comes out next year, the Gulf War game, I think, is rumored. If they're going to get that on Switch 2 next year, then I don't think it's too far-fetched to assume they would go ahead, do the legwork, and get Warzone running. Even though it's a big open area, I think they should be able to do that. And then one final thing I want to mention, I would love to see this happen. This is unrelated to Phil Spencer's comments about Call of Duty on Nintendo. Bring us back some old games. This goes for PlayStation and Xbox as well, actually. We recently saw a huge resurgence with the Xbox 360 back compat games on Xbox Series X, where the matchmaking was fixed on, you know, like Black Ops 2 and Modern Warfare 2, 2009, and COD 4, and all these things, Black Ops 1, and that would be so cool to see those games come to PlayStation 5, but also Switch, or Switch 2. If we can't get Call of Duty on a Nintendo console until, let's say, Switch 2 comes out in 2025, or whatever, right, it would probably take a couple of years of legwork just to get, like, a porting studio and all that. it'd be really cool if, to tide us over, they did a remaster or even just a straight port, frankly, of something like Black Ops 2 or even Modern Warfare Remastered, which I actually originally thought that would come to Switch back in 2017, because that was a 2016 release that would have been, I'm sure, able to run on Switch hardware. That would have been really cool. So if maybe to tide us over, we get some old Call of Duty games, I would be very, very happy with that. I would love to see that. And in general, as someone who kind of grew up playing Call of Duty on Nintendo and then, you know, later transitioned to PlayStation, I would love to see this happen. I would love to see Call of Duty back on Nintendo. I think it would be a huge deal for Nintendo as a business. As someone who likes analyzing their business, that's a big get back for them. People scoff at the idea of playing Call of Duty with motion controls or even just on a Nintendo handheld at all, but I bet there's a huge market for that. So I'll be very curious to see how this develops. I mean, listen, the Activision acquisition isn't done, but it seems pretty likely. All they need to do is get the CMA to approve. So at this point, it's really just a waiting game. And if they acquire it, I mean, they have a 10-year binding legal contract to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo. We don't know when that deal starts or when it is supposedly going to end. We just know it's a 10-year commitment. So I would assume Phil Spencer probably talking about next Nintendo console, and then from there we'll have 10 years of Call of Duty, and at that point they would probably just keep releasing it, right? So it is a very exciting time to be a Nintendo Call of Duty player for sure, for those of us that still remember the glory days of COD on Wii and Wii U. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. How do you think Activision and Microsoft will handle Call of Duty on Nintendo? Do you think Phil Spencer will be able to hold true to his word and make feature parody, content parody versions on Nintendo? And do you think it will somehow miraculously happen on Switch, or most likely be safe for the Switch too? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. And until next time, folks, peace.